Following the post on proteins, where I ended up talking about vegetarian options as well, um, I thought I would take on this topic on soya and soya products because it can be a little controversial about whether it is safe, whether it causes breast cancer. Those um, stories have been going around. So we need to sort of see whether there's any truth in that. I thought I would address that point here. So when it comes to soya products, that includes soya beans, soya milk, and fermented products like tempeh and tofu. These all can be considered as soya products. Right. So what is important in this soya is something called isoflavones, and soya products have a high significant amount of these isoflavones, right? And they have both an estrogenic as well as an anti-estrogenic activity. That will depend on the amount or the concentration of your estrogen hormone as well. So when you look at fermented soya products like the tofus and the tempehs and all, where you ferment it, it becomes higher. The content of isoflavones increase in that. Now the question is it cancer causing or is it cancer protective? Right. So this, like I mentioned, will depend on the amount of isoflavones that you are consuming or the amount of soya that you are taking, uh, your age or your hormone level, and the specific population, whether you're Asian, non-Asian, all of this will have an impact. There are some mouse studies done on soya products where they looked at the estrogenic effects of these on mice, and these studies have shown that these mice had a tumor developing which was estrogen receptor positive. And so here what is done is an extract of soya is given directly to the mouse where the concentration of the isoflavones will be extremely high. But this is different from a human study, and later left the links of these studies in the description so that you can go and read these and get an idea yourself. Then, when it went into human studies or population studies, we see sort of a difference, because rather than taking the extract and giving the mice, when you are consuming soya as soya itself or soya products, the effect we saw was different, right? So, in premenopausal women who have not yet gone into menopause, or where they are not they have high circulating estrogen concentrations, the isoflavone acts as an estrogen antagonist or as an anti-estrogen effect, right? Then in a postmenopausal women who have, or women with low estrogen concentration, they have a weak estrogenic effect. So you can see the two opposites playing here. Either they act as anti-estrogen or as a weak estrogen effect. And it was shown in controlled human trials that a moderate soya consumption, as what is reflected in a traditional Asian dietary pattern, doesn't indicate any adverse estrogenic effects to the breast tissue. So these studies showed that the breast tissue or the mammogram showed that the breast density or the tissue density was normal, or it didn't have any adverse effects consuming it in moderation in a traditional Asian cuisine. Now there's a little dampen here. Um, Here we see that 50% of Asians, the lucky ones, have the ability to make these isoflavones more bioavailable. Now, these isoflavones are within the cells of these soya beans, right? We've got to digest it and break it down and take it in. So it is present, the bacteria that will do this job, it was shown is present in only 50% of the Asian. Now, what we don't know and is not revealed here is whether there is an ability for us to, depending on the diet we take, have a healthy concentration of these bacteria so that the soya becomes more bioavailable. Or is it just a hit and miss? You become one in two persons who have this or not, right? So either way, no harm done for you to be consuming, and if you are one of the lucky ones who have this intestinal bacteria, the availability will be higher. But on another note, just deviating a little out of that, recapping something I mentioned earlier, if we say that it is the presence of this intestinal bacteria that makes it more available, then we need to ensure that we have whatever it takes for this healthy bacteria to thrive. Remember the microbiome I spoke of, the good bacteria that live in the gut. I've spoken about this earlier. So if you are somebody who takes a whole lot of sugary food, high fat food, processed food, if you are not on a healthy diet, if you're someone who is always bloated and you don't feel good because it could mean that your microbiome is not functioning well. How do we ensure our microbiome is functioning well? Is by feeding them the food or the nourishment they need. What is that? That is the whole grain foods, the foods that are rich in fiber, and staying away from high sugar, high oil, um, processed foods. So when we give them the good nutrients, they thrive, and then they will help us by making these soya products more bioavailable, the isoflavones more bioavailable, and of course preventing the feeling of bloatedness and giving an overall feel good feeling, right? So yeah, so if that bacteria thrives, if this bioavailability increases, then in those individuals, which is roughly 50% of the population, we'll see these beneficial effects of the soya and soya products. So remember when we talked about moderate consumption, I said that in order to get these benefits, there's a certain amount you need to take, and it's best to always consume the soya in moderation to be safe as well as to have the benefits. So what is moderation? 25 to 50 milligrams of soy isoflavones per day is said to bring the positive health effects. 100 grams of tofu will give you around 20 milligrams of isoflavones. So if you consume in moderation that amount of tofu, that will give you the isoflavones in moderation, so you don't have to fear any risk of adverse effects to your breast tissue or any breast carcinoma. Then when we looked at protein, the protein post, we spoke about soya products and soya acting as protein substitutes for vegetarians. And just to recap that post, I mentioned that half a cup of soya or 50 grams of tofu contains 7 grams of protein. So you need to be responsible, or you can contact your medical practitioner or a nutritionist and calculate how much of protein you as an adult need, and into this mix you can add some of these proteins. In summary, soya and soya products are a good source of proteins and isoflavones, and make sure you eat in moderation.